So now whenever you're good, okay?
Okay, so my presentation is on domestic violence by me, Simran Romero. So what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is defined as violence that's committed by a partner or family member with intentions of having control over another person. So unless intervened or stopped, the intensity and frequency of domestic violence will usually progress with time. So there are 4 types of domestic violence. The 4 types are physical, psychological, sexual, and emotional. Physical and sexual abuse relate to physical behaviors that involve deliberate harm or sexual behavior that's forced upon without consent. Emotional and psychological violence are non-physical behaviors that usually use manipulation in order to install fear or humiliation in one. Throughout my presentation, many of the studies referred to are related to physical abuse. So here are some statistics that relate to the United States. There are about 10 million estimated cases of domestic violence in adults per year. 50% of this estimated number of cases usually go unreported, and there's about 20 victims per minute. So resilience is defined as the ability to overcome or bounce back stronger after undergoing adversity. Many victims of domestic violence are able to display levels of this when recovering. Some ways in which victims display this are through supportive relationships, coping techniques, and reflection. So supportive groups strive to establish safe spaces for victims to improve their overall well-being, share their experiences with other victims, and create goals for their future when overcoming this traumatic period of time for them. A study done by Constantino Kim from the University of Pittsburgh and Crane from Duquesne University displayed an improvement in female domestic violence victims' well-being after attending a social support intervention. The second factor is coping techniques. Coping techniques give victims the opportunity to learn how to manage their overwhelming emotions coming out of this period of time. And some of these include denial, distraction, acceptance, normalizing, meditation, and deep breathing. A study done by Bonnie Beatrice McPherson, a student at California State University with a master's in social work, found that deep breathing was utilized by 86% of victims residing in a domestic home shelter. And the last factor is reflection. So reflection allows victims to look back on the trauma they faced in order to give themselves enough room to grow from their trauma. So this brings me to my question: how can awareness be raised for domestic violence victims? And my first solution is to establish domestic violence learning in school environments. So essentially, a program would be established where trained adults can visit schools to inform students on the foundation of domestic violence. So the foundation is what is domestic violence, some actions to take, and early warning signs of it. And the overall goals of this program would be to create a safe haven for students, inform students about what domestic violence is, and strive to raise awareness. So as seen in this graph here, the primary age group of victims who faced domestic violence in 2020 was between the ages of 18 through 24, 25 through 34, and 35 through 44. So establishing this program for high schoolers would be effective since they're heading into that age range where they're most at risk for undergoing domestic violence. So some pros of my solution are increased awareness. So this program would make students more well-informed and involved in the fight against domestic violence. Prevention would increase the amount of resources and awareness for victims or ones who are affected by it. And lastly, involvement, which allows students to feel more united or safe in a space with their peers where they're all collectively fighting against domestic violence. So some cons of my solution are inertia or indifference. So some students may lack interest in learning about domestic violence, making them refrain from playing a bigger role in this fight in this group. Secondly, the lack of resources. An issue may rise with gaining enough professionals to educate students and their willingness or time to individually visit these schools to educate them. And lastly, triggering past trauma. Students who are victims of domestic violence or are sensitive to the subject may feel uncomfortable or triggered with the subject bringing into life through this program. So some implications of the solution are a supportive environment for victims or all students. So an environment will be created with a place where students are able to learn along with being able to earn or give support to their peers. And secondly, future awareness. This program has the ability to encourage all students to play a larger role in the fight against domestic violence. So my 2 limitations are reluctancy for change. Unfortunately, you can only help those who are willing to be helped, One's reluctance to learn about domestic violence may deem the information that's being presented through this program as irrelevant. And secondly, apathy, which relates to reluctancy for change. A lack of concern may be present due to not being personally affected by domestic violence in the past. So this leads me to my second solution, which is establishing healthy relationship workshops for teens. So another program would be established, this time student-run, where students can be informed about healthy relationships today. They would learn what healthy relationships are, they could talk to other students about their opinion or differing views, and they would be presented with interactive activities. So overall, the goals would be to give students a voice and to act out these scenarios to display to the other peers. So one of the implications of this is a safe environment. This program would provide a safe space for teens to ask questions and learn how to prevent violent relationships from coming in their future. And secondly is the alternative way of teaching. This program would give students the opportunity to see or act out firsthand what healthy relationships look like. So my two limitations are participation, gaining enough students to participate in the interactive activities and act out these scenarios for their other peers, and lastly, groundwork, getting professional assistance in laying the foundation of this program and what a healthy relationship looks like to begin the scenarios to act out for the other students. So for example, this could be a counselor or a therapist who has background knowledge in what a healthy relationship looks like. So here are my citations. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay. So I have two questions for you. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process? Did your research go in a different direction than you originally planned?
So at first, I was thinking about comparing like how much awareness males receive with domestic violence, since it's a lot smaller than how much awareness females receive with domestic violence. But I found that many of the studies I was looking at, they usually are female, and there's more statistics for females since it just ends up being a bigger number. So I decided to narrow down my question since there was more recent studies done on female, and that ended up changing the way I researched it.
Okay. And then lastly, how does your conclusion respond to any of the other research or sources you examined?
So I found that many of the other research that's been done in the past talks about why there are such big numbers of domestic violence and how to slow these down as a community overall. But I thought to focus mainly on the youth as a community, and that's why a lot of my solutions relate to high school stuff, because as I showed before, those age ranges when they're being most affected ends up when they're coming outside of high school. So implementing these solutions for when they're in high school would be beneficial since they need those going forward.
Okay, thank you very much.